Have you ever noticed how one negative thought can completely change your entire day? You wake up feeling okay, then suddenly one stressful thought appears. Something somebody said, a fear about money, a memory from the past, anxiety about the future. And before you even realize it, your body changes, your mood changes, your energy changes, your decisions change, your relationships change. Your entire experience of reality begins changing because of one pattern of thought. Now imagine if most human suffering works exactly like that. Not because life is always terrible, but because the mind has unknowingly become addicted to fear, stress, worry, resentment, comparison, and negative internal dialogue. Well, nearly 100 years ago, a spiritual teacher named Emmett Fox introduced a simple but life-changing challenge called the 7-Day Mental Diet. And although the idea sounds simple, millions of people throughout history have found it deeply transformative because the challenge reveals something shocking about the human mind. Most people are not consciously thinking. They are unconsciously repeating mental habits over and over again every single day. Take a moment to reflect on that, because this documentary may completely change the way you understand your own mind. Now, before we continue, this does not mean pretending problems do not exist. It does not mean toxic positivity, and it does not mean suppressing emotions. The 7-Day Mental Diet is about awareness, learning to observe mental patterns consciously, instead of automatically feeding destructive thinking all day long. Take a slow, deep breath in, and gently breathe out. Beautiful. Now here was the challenge Emmett Fox proposed. For 7 days, you do your absolute best not to dwell on negative thoughts. And if you catch yourself falling deeply into negativity, you simply begin the 7 days again from the start. Now at first, many people laugh at this idea. They think, that sounds easy. But something fascinating happens when they actually try it. They suddenly realize how constantly negative the average human mind has become. Complaining, judging, worrying, comparing, catastrophizing, replaying painful conversations, imagining worst-case scenarios, mentally attacking themselves, mentally attacking others. The average person may spend years living inside unconscious stress patterns without even noticing. Take a moment to think about that. I'm sure your future self will thank you. Now, my friends, let me tell you a story. A young man named Daniel constantly believed life was against him. Every morning, before even getting out of bed, his mind began automatically. Another stressful day. My life never changes. Everything is difficult. Nothing works out for me. At work, he focused mostly on problems. Traffic, money stress, difficult people, bad news. And slowly, his entire nervous system became conditioned into stress and frustration. Now, interestingly, Daniel genuinely believed the outside world was the main cause of his unhappiness. But one day, after experiencing severe burnout and anxiety, he discovered the idea of the 7-Day Mental Diet. At first, he dismissed it, but eventually he decided to try. And within the first few hours, he became shocked. He noticed his mind constantly producing automatic negativity, not because he consciously wanted suffering, but because negative thinking had become habitual. Take a moment to reflect on that, because awareness itself is often the first stage of transformation. Now, my friends, modern neuroscience actually supports many aspects of this idea. The brain develops neural pathways based on repetition. Thought patterns repeated consistently become stronger over time. This is called neuroplasticity. The mind becomes better at whatever it repeatedly practices. If somebody constantly practices fear, anger, resentment, self-hatred, or anxiety, those pathways strengthen. But if somebody consistently practices gratitude, presence, self-awareness, calmness, compassion, and constructive thinking, those pathways strengthen too. Take a moment to think about that, because your thoughts are not only affecting your mood, they are physically shaping patterns within the brain itself. Now, this does not mean life suddenly becomes perfect through positive thinking alone. Real pain exists, trauma exists, loss exists, financial struggles exist, mental health challenges exist. But the 7-day mental diet teaches something deeper. Suffering often becomes magnified by the mind continuously feeding fearful narratives, and many people unknowingly spend years mentally poisoning themselves daily. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Now, let's explore how this appears in real life. Imagine a mother constantly worrying about her children. Now, caring is natural. Love is beautiful. But constant fearful thinking creates something different. Her mind repeatedly imagines disasters, problems, failure, danger, and worst-case scenarios. Over time, her nervous system begins living in survival mode. Her body produces stress hormones constantly. She becomes emotionally exhausted, irritable, anxious, and ironically, her fearful energy begins affecting the family environment itself. Now, compare that to a parent who remains aware, present, calm, prepared when necessary, but not mentally living inside constant imagined catastrophe. The external world may not change completely, but the internal experience changes enormously. Take a moment to reflect on that, because your mental environment affects everybody around you. Another major part of the mental diet involves what we consume mentally every day. Modern humans consume enormous amounts of negativity. Constant bad news, social media comparison, violence, fear-based media, outrage culture, celebrity drama, arguments, doom scrolling, and many people wonder why their nervous systems feel overwhelmed. Imagine eating unhealthy food every hour for years. Eventually, the body becomes sick. The mind works similarly. Mental consumption shapes emotional reality. Take a moment to think about that. I'm sure your future self will thank you. Now, let me tell you another story. A woman named Sophia constantly compared herself to others online. Every day she saw better bodies, better lifestyles, better relationships, better success, better holidays, better homes. And without realizing it, comparison slowly destroyed her inner peace. She began feeling not good enough, behind in life, unattractive, unsuccessful, and disconnected from herself. But one day, after hearing about the 7-day mental diet, she made one simple decision. For 7 days, she stopped feeding comparison. Less social media, more presence, more gratitude, more real-world connection, and something fascinating happened. She realized much of her suffering had not come from reality itself, but from constantly mentally measuring her life against everybody else. Take a moment to reflect on that, because comparison is one of the greatest thieves of peace in modern society. Now, my friends, Emmett Fox also explained something deeply important. Negative thinking is contagious. Walk into a room where people constantly complain, judge, gossip, and criticize, and notice how heavy the energy feels. Now walk into an environment where people feel calm, kind, grateful, and emotionally balanced. The nervous system feels different immediately. Human beings emotionally influence each other constantly. This is why protecting your mental environment matters enormously. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Beautiful. Now, one misunderstanding people make about the mental diet is believing it means denying emotions. But healthy awareness is different from suppression. If somebody feels grief, they should allow grief compassionately. If somebody feels anger, they can observe it consciously without becoming consumed by it. The goal is not becoming emotionless. The goal is becoming aware enough not to unconsciously drown inside destructive mental loops. Take a moment to think about that, because awareness changes everything. Now, my friends, one of the most powerful parts of the 7-day mental diet involves self-talk. Many people speak to themselves internally in ways they would never speak to another human being. You're useless. You always fail. Nobody cares about you. You're unattractive. You'll never succeed. Imagine hearing those words constantly, every day, for years. The nervous system absorbs them deeply, and sadly, many people become prisoners of their own internal dialogue. But awareness creates the possibility of change, not fake affirmations disconnected from reality, but compassionate awareness, balanced thinking, constructive thinking, present thinking. Take a moment to reflect on that, because the voice inside your mind becomes the emotional environment you live within daily. Now, my friends, let's talk about something modern society rarely teaches properly: attention. Whatever consistently receives your attention grows stronger psychologically. Fear grows through attention. Anger grows through attention. Resentment grows through attention. But gratitude grows through attention too. Presence grows through attention too. Compassion grows through attention 3. Peace grows through attention 4. The mind becomes shaped by what it repeatedly focuses upon. And perhaps this is why so many spiritual traditions throughout history emphasized mindfulness and awareness. Buddhism taught observing thoughts without attachment. Stoic philosophers taught mastery over mental reactions. Ancient yogis trained awareness through meditation. Modern psychology now studies cognitive restructuring and mindfulness scientifically. Different traditions, similar wisdom. Take a moment to think about that, because humanity has been exploring the power of thought for thousands of years. Now, my friends, let me tell you one final story. An elderly gardener spent decades quietly caring for plants in a small village. People often asked him why he always seemed peaceful. One day, a young, stressed businessman visited him and asked, "How do you stay so calm all the time?" The old gardener smiled gently and replied, "Every day I decide carefully what I water." The businessman looked confused. The gardener continued, "If I water weeds, they grow. If I water flowers, they grow." The human mind works the same way. Take a moment to reflect on that, because those simple words contain enormous wisdom. Now imagine if millions of people truly practiced mental awareness consistently. Less unconscious anger, less emotional reactivity, less comparison, less fear-driven living, more presence, more compassion, more conscious parenting, more emotional intelligence, more inner peace. The world itself could begin changing gradually from the inside outward, because society is ultimately built from human minds, and exhausted, fearful, unconscious minds create exhausted, fearful, unconscious societies. Now, my friends, this does not mean perfection. Nobody maintains perfect thoughts constantly. Even highly mindful people experience fear, sadness, stress, and emotional pain sometimes. The difference is awareness, catching destructive mental spirals earlier, returning to presence sooner, not feeding suffering unnecessarily. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Beautiful. Now imagine trying the 7-day mental diet yourself. Not perfectly, but honestly. Simply becoming more aware, watching thoughts carefully, reducing unnecessary negativity, choosing healthier mental input, practicing gratitude, practicing presence, practicing conscious self-talk. Perhaps your life circumstances may not instantly transform overnight, but your relationship with life itself may begin changing profoundly. And sometimes, that changes everything. Take a moment to think about that. Now, my friends, there is another reason the 7-day mental diet becomes so life-changing for many people. It forces people to finally realize how much of human suffering comes from unconscious repetition. Most people do not wake up each morning consciously choosing peace or awareness. They wake up and immediately continue yesterday's thinking. The same fears, the same resentment, the same identity. The same stress loops. The same emotional patterns. It is almost like the mind becomes programmed to replay familiar suffering automatically. And after enough repetition, people begin believing those thoughts are who they are. Take a moment to reflect on that, because many people are not actually experiencing reality clearly. They are experiencing layers of conditioned thinking repeating over reality constantly. Now imagine two people walking through the exact same rainy day. One person complains endlessly. Terrible weather. This day is ruined. Nothing ever goes right. Meanwhile, another person smiles softly, breathes deeply, and enjoys the sound of rain on the trees. Same weather, completely different inner experience. Why? Because human beings do not only experience life externally, they experience life through the filter of the mind. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Beautiful. Now, my friends, one of the greatest mental habits the 7-Day Mental Diet exposes is catastrophic thinking. Many people unconsciously live as though disaster is constantly about to happen. A small problem appears, and the mind instantly creates 20 imagined future problems. A text message gets ignored, the mind creates rejection stories. A mistake happens at work, the mind imagines losing everything. A strange sensation appears in the body, the mind jumps immediately into fear. And over time, the nervous system becomes exhausted from living inside imaginary emergencies. Take a moment to think about that, because many people spend more energy suffering mentally from imagined futures than from actual present reality. Now, this does not mean preparation is bad. Wisdom matters. Responsibility matters. But there is a huge difference between practical thinking and chronic fearful thinking. One creates clarity. The other creates suffering. Now let me tell you a story. A young woman named Elena constantly worried about failure. Before trying anything new, her mind immediately imagined humiliation, judgment, or disaster. So she avoided opportunities, avoided conversations, avoided growth. And slowly, fear began shrinking her entire life. One day, her grandfather asked her a strange question. He said, "How many times has the disaster in your mind actually happened exactly the way you imagined?" Elena paused and slowly realized something shocking. Most of the terrible futures she feared never happened at all. The suffering had mainly existed inside the imagination. Take a moment to reflect on that, because the anxious mind often creates stories far more painful than reality itself. Now, my friends, another deeply destructive mental habit is resentment. Holding on to anger for years, replaying painful memories repeatedly, mentally arguing with people long after situations have ended. And while somebody may believe resentment punishes the other person, it often poisons the person holding it most deeply. The body stays tense. The nervous system stays activated. The mind stays trapped in the past. And slowly, resentment becomes part of identity itself. Now, forgiveness does not mean allowing abuse. It does not mean pretending harmful behavior was acceptable. But sometimes forgiveness simply means, I no longer want this pain controlling my inner world. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Beautiful. Now, modern psychology increasingly understands something ancient traditions already taught thousands of years ago. The body and mind are deeply connected. Chronic negative thinking affects sleep, digestion, stress hormones, blood pressure, energy, focus, and emotional regulation. Long-term stress physically changes the nervous system. And sadly, many people live in such constant mental tension. They no longer even remember what calm feels like. This is why mindfulness becomes so important. Mindfulness interrupts unconscious mental momentum. It creates space between thought and reaction, fear and awareness, emotion and identity. Take a moment to think about that, because awareness itself is powerful medicine for the mind. Now, my friends, let's talk about identity. Many people become emotionally attached to suffering without realizing it. The identity of the victim, the anxious person, the angry person, the unlucky person, the broken person. And after years, the mind becomes uncomfortable without familiar emotional patterns. This is why some people repeatedly recreate drama unconsciously. Peace feels unfamiliar. Stillness feels uncomfortable. Calmness feels strange, because the nervous system has become addicted to emotional chaos. Take a moment to reflect on that, because healing sometimes feels uncomfortable at first, simply because the mind is no longer feeding familiar suffering. Now let me tell you another story. A man named Marcus spent years complaining about his life, his relationships, his job, his stress, his finances. And one afternoon, an old friend finally asked him something directly. Do you actually want solutions, or do you only want to repeat suffering? At first, Marcus became defensive. But later that night, those words echoed in his mind, because deep down he realized something painful. Complaining had become emotionally familiar. It gave temporary relief without requiring change. But awareness changes everything. And slowly, Marcus began practicing the mental diet honestly. Less complaining, less blame. More responsibility. More awareness. More gratitude. Not fake positivity. Real conscious observation. And over time, his entire emotional energy slowly changed. Take a moment to think about that. I'm sure your future self will thank you. Now, my friends, another dangerous modern habit is unconscious comparison. Many people no longer experience life directly. They experience life through comparison, comparing success, comparing appearance, comparing relationships, comparing money, comparing lifestyles, and social media intensified this enormously. People compare their real life to carefully edited highlight reels online, and slowly, gratitude disappears, presence disappears, inner peace disappears. Now imagine a child growing up constantly believing, I am not enough unless I become more successful than everybody else. That child may spend an entire lifetime chasing external validation while never feeling truly fulfilled internally. Take a moment to reflect on that, because comparison creates endless psychological hunger. Now, my friends, the 7-day mental diet also reveals how language affects consciousness. Words carry emotional energy. The phrases people repeat daily matter enormously. I'm always stressed. Life is terrible. Nothing works out. I hate my life. I can't handle anything. Repeated constantly, these words shape emotional identity. Now, this does not mean denying difficult experiences, but awareness asks, am I feeding suffering unconsciously through repetition? Ancient traditions understood this deeply. Modern psychology understands it too. The stories people repeatedly tell themselves become part of emotional reality. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Beautiful. Now imagine replacing unconscious negativity with conscious awareness. Not perfection, awareness. Catching thoughts sooner. Observing emotional reactions sooner. Returning to presence sooner. This alone can begin transforming mental health dramatically over time, because the mind becomes calmer through practice, just like the body becomes stronger through training. Now, my friends, another important lesson from the mental diet involves environment. Human beings absorb energy from people around them constantly. Spend enough time around chronic negativity, and the nervous system becomes affected. Constant gossip, fear, complaining, anger, judgment, drama. But peaceful people affect others too. Calmness spreads, presence spreads, kindness spreads, emotional regulation spreads. This is why protecting your environment matters deeply. Not from superiority, but from awareness. Take a moment to think about that, because the people around you influence your inner world more than you may realize. Now let me tell you one final story. A wise teacher once placed two wolves into a story for his students. He explained, "Inside every human being, there are two wolves constantly fighting. One wolf represents fear, anger, jealousy, resentment, greed, comparison, and negativity. The other wolf represents peace, love, awareness, compassion, gratitude, and wisdom." One student asked, "Which wolf wins?" The old teacher smiled gently and replied, "The one you feed." Take a moment to reflect on that, because perhaps the 7-day mental diet is really about learning what we feed internally every single day. Now, my friends, imagine if children learned this awareness early in life: how to observe thoughts, how to calm the nervous system, how to avoid unconscious negativity, how to practice gratitude, how to emotionally regulate stress. The future of humanity itself could become healthier emotionally, because many adults today were never taught how to manage the mind consciously. They inherited stress patterns unconsciously from generations before them. Now awareness creates the possibility of breaking those cycles. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Beautiful. Now, before we finish together, I want you to imagine yourself 7 days from now, more aware, more present, less emotionally controlled by random thoughts. Not perfect, just more conscious, more intentional, more peaceful internally. And perhaps that small shift alone could begin changing your entire future gradually. Because every thought repeated consistently becomes part of the life experience you build daily. Now silently repeat inside your mind, "I do not need to feed every negative thought." Again, I choose awareness over unconscious suffering. And finally, peace grows where attention flows. Beautiful. If this message found you at the right time, there are deeper mindfulness journeys waiting for you on this channel. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next mindfulness journey.